Hello, listeners, and welcome to another episode of Subscription Scaled. I'm your host, Nick Frederick. With me today is Luke Switkowski, who is the CEO of Rooster. Luke, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Nice to be here.
Awesome. Well, yeah, excited to dive in here today. Sounds like your business took a similar path to that ours did, but let's go back a little bit. Tell us about the history of Kognitiv and Rooster and how you guys came to start it.
Sure. So Kognitiv started almost 7 years ago now, and it's basically a consulting company that helps clients that run Workday, the Workday system for HR and finance, and we help with anything that they need from a configuration perspective or support perspective. And as we were building that business, we saw an opportunity to create a piece of software, which ended up being much bigger than we kind of ever anticipated, but there seemed to be a need for capability to schedule interviews really easily within the context of not just Workday in general, but since we knew Workday, we decided to build a product that really tightly integrates with Workday and allows basically recruiters to schedule interviews really, really quickly. Whether it's a one-on-one interview, round robin interview, panel interview, and so on. And instead of spending minutes or hours doing it, they can spend just a few seconds doing what they need to do. And through that process, what we found was that we needed to get our ducks in a row pretty quickly because we did have something that got traction, and then eventually we ended up spinning out Rooster from Kognitiv, so it's a separate company now because it just needed to happen. But it's just like Kognitiv, it was bootstrapped within the enterprise of Kognitiv. So we never raised money for either Kognitiv or Rooster, even though I did contact a lot of VCs for money and I got zero responses. So we just kind of continued to do it, and now we have almost 50 clients live on Rooster, and those are kind of like large enterprise clients. So I'm talking about 5,000 employee to 200,000 employee companies that run it.
Wow.
So, and Rooster's been out now for just about, it's basically its third full year. So it's been in production for 3 years, and it was in development about a year prior to that. So it took us a year to develop something that was good enough for someone to buy, and then we've been at it for 3 more years after that.
Okay. So did you build the product based upon one specific client's need, or was there a need across multiple and you thought, hey, if we go build this product, we have clients that'll want it? I mean, talk through that evolution.
Yeah. So no, it wasn't just one client's need. It was a trend that we were seeing where many companies were looking for ways to more seamlessly schedule interviews. Because a lot of applicant tracking systems, whether you're looking at Workday, Greenhouse, iCIMS, or whatever, they might have like a rudimentary scheduling solution, kind of like a Calendly-like feature where pick a link, pick a time. That's relatively simple to implement. But once you start to get into the complexities of I want automatically web conferencing included in this like panel interview where it's like 3 people back to back talking to someone, and I need to send specific invites with attachments and deal with resumes and all that stuff, and then time zone adjustments and language, then it gets pretty complicated pretty quick. And so there was this broad need because as far as email systems are concerned, basically clients are running Office or Google, right, for email today, for enterprise email. And there wasn't really a solution that kind of did both or both simultaneously. So that was another kind of key feature of Rooster, where we're multi-system, multi-domain. So you can actually run Zoom Teams all at once, or Google G Suite and Office all at once. It doesn't really matter. But it was definitely like, it wasn't just one client. I would advise anyone who's starting a company, make sure you have more than one solution.
Yeah. So you saw this kind of need in the clients you were already working with on a consulting perspective. So when it came to the product market fit, right, and you guys were trying to think through the requirements of what's going to go into this product, how did you do that? Were you basing it off of the consulting engagements? Did you talk to prospective clients and say, hey, if we build this, how would you want it to work? Like, talk us through that product development cycle.
Sure. So it was, to be perfectly honest, we probably didn't spend as much time on the product market fit as maybe as we should have. So we had, at the time we decided to build Rooster, we had 50 recruiting clients or clients that were running Workday recruiting, right? And basically no one was using an automated scheduling solution within that group, except for maybe like one. But there was definitely a need for it, right? And so initially when we actually built Rooster, the first kind of version of it, we wanted to, make it all fancy and AI and automatic. And that was actually a massive blunder in terms of our assumption, because with scheduling, it's a lot like compensation plans from one company to the next. No one does it the same. It's always a different process. So you need a platform that's flexible enough to be able to conform to any process that it encounters. So, well, the way we switched our approach on that, and basically we made Rooster as manual or as automatic as you want it. So you control the automations that you want to turn on. Like I'll give you a quick example of one. Is, let's say you book an interview, and if the candidate cancels the interview or declines it, it auto declines it from everybody's calendar. Well, that's an automation you can turn on or off, right? And there's a number of these within the system. But the idea was to, whenever you're automating anything, I think there's a couple of important things. One is you need to be transparent into what you're automating. And then two, you need to be able to allow the customer or client to dig into and see what the automation did. I think there's a lot of solutions out there that do what I would call black box automation, where it automates it and then something goes wrong. You have no idea what happened.
Yeah.
And then they don't give you the tools or the information to tell you where the process broke down. And I think that's extremely frustrating. So we did not want to do that approach. That was kind of version 0.1 of Rooster. And then we had to pull back and kind of go the opposite way.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, you guys are serving enterprise, right? Large organizations who we do as well. And in our experience, they want things to work the way they want it to, right? Like they're not really willing to compromise. And, in a lot of situations, they're like, just customize it. I don't care. I want it to work like this. So how have you guys balanced the needs of building a product that you want to work for multiple clients versus maybe some individual demands that were thrown at you?
Yeah, so I think you have to basically kind of rank order the priorities, and really you need to really listen to your customer base, and then also make some executive decisions as to, is this feature really what they want, right? And I think also, depending on who you're talking to, you might get a different answer. So let's say you're talking to a coordinator or a scheduler, they would love feature XYZ, right? You talk to their boss or the CHRO, different set of features, right? Okay. So I think knowing the audience and the persona is really, really key. And then also, kind of taking it in broad strokes where there's, a broad need to, have this broad use case that's flexible enough. So I think it's totally fine to develop for use cases that have some flexibility within the use case so that you can adapt it to some nuance from one client to the next. As far as enterprise is concerned, yes, there's really no compromise there. You have to deliver the product and deliver it well. Otherwise, turn it off. But I think also the other component that's very, very needed and also looked at it is security, right? So the security architecture needs to be, really well done, so that it can be presented and understood, and that there's a trust factor, with that, because an enterprise company is not just going to let you plug into their email system or their recruiting system, without proof that you're doing it in a secure way.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, did you find in a lot of situations you had already built up some trust with these clients because you were already working with them in a consulting capacity, right? Absolutely. So then saying, "Hey, we built this product," they're like, "Oh yeah, we know you guys, we trust you, so then we'll give it a try."
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it really helped us that our very first Rooster client was a cybersecurity software provider. They're based out of Boston, and they were a services client, for 4 years before we built Rooster, and really worked closely with them to make sure that because they basically told us, "Hey, if you build something like this, we'll buy it," right? So that was nice, obviously, and they're a wonderful customer, and we've been working with them forever, and they're amazing to work with, and we work with them to this day on both the software and the services side of the house.
Gotcha. Well, speaking of buying it, what is the commercial model look like? Is this licensing per seat? How do you guys work it?
Well, so because we're in the enterprise space, we give an enterprise price. So it's basically a single price. It's per, it's funny when it comes to pricing. It is part science, and part of it you do try to figure out what ROI you are providing so you can price your solution accordingly.
Sure.
But there is a little bit of an art to it in the sense that the structure of it, like how you price something, whether it's monthly billing or once a year or whatever, I think that'll really depend in what sector you're providing your solution in to how that needs to be modeled. Because I can tell you that large enterprises, they budget once a year, so they don't want something that fluctuates in price month to month. Like that's a no-go, right? So what they want is generally a one price that doesn't change. And what we've done is we've actually made it an enterprise price that has essentially unlimited users attached to it, so that they can, because in the recruiting space, there's generally a lot of turnover. So like coordinators that just schedule interviews all day, they switch jobs relatively often. So you don't want to be you don't want to be in the seat management business.
Yeah. Speaking of that turnover, did that mean that being able to, really having an intuitive interface and making the product easy to use was going to be really important for you guys? I mean, you probably didn't want a new person starting every week and reaching out, having to go through a training. So how did you guys approach that?
Yes, absolutely. So yes, usability was definitely top of mind. And the way we approached the whole design of the product is we, followed the philosophy of put yourself in the user's shoes. Like don't make the cardinal mistake of like, oh, what technology should we use? How should we build it? It's how should it be used, and what kind of experience does the candidate want? What kind of experience does the scheduler want? So yes, actually, what's been interesting to see is that for organizations that, let's say, scheduled manually forever, what something like Rooster allows them to do is it allows them to actually have a process, kind of an implicit process, because there's a product in place that makes you follow templates and things like that when you send an invite, so that things are uniform. So it's a consistent candidate experience, regardless of who the scheduler is. And it is easy to use. It's really easy and quick to figure out, how to use. And we have, all kinds of resources for our customers to use to get up to speed. And so that was definitely important. And, we've seen that it has not been an issue, at all in terms of adoption of new users coming in and starting to use it. And as far as change management is concerned too, it's really, really low, because I could, if you schedule, let's say, an interview with me through Rooster, you would not even know that you're using Rooster to do it, outside of you picking the initial time to talk with me, because all the invites and everything that go via email, it looks just like a regular email. It's just like a regular invite. So that was really, really important for us to not, make you download an app or like some kind of weird user interface that you have to use, or whatever the case may be.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, let's turn to new client acquisition for a second. I assume, of course, the consulting business is going to feed in, some of these opportunities. Are you guys utilizing, is there a Workday marketplace that you guys are using to market, and what are other channels that you guys are using?
Actually, primarily, the way we've been getting our customers is generally through website hits. It looks like people are looking for solutions in this space, and they tend to reach out that way. What was actually kind of interesting, speaking of that, is that we were for sure convinced that once we launched Rooster, every one of our recruiting clients on the consulting side will buy it like tomorrow. It'll be super easy. Wrong. It's totally wrong. It's wrong assumption. Because the people who buy services within an enterprise, are not the ones making decisions for the talent acquisition team, for example. They're not the ones that are driven by how well the talent team does, right? So it's a different buyer, and and conversely, just because you sell Rooster to, let's say, a Fortune 500 company, which we've done multiple times now, that doesn't mean tomorrow you get to do services for them. It doesn't work. It works both ways. So now, what obviously helps is that our expertise in the Workday space helps inform the product. It allows us to provide top-notch service in this space. There are other players or competitors in our space, but they're connecting to like 10 different things. So to be an expert in 10 different things, I think is really tough. We connect to, Workday, recruiting, and that's basically, it's basically, now you can run Rooster standalone, but, we don't, we're not, advertising that we connect to, every ATS imaginable or anything like that. So I think that really helps.
Yeah.
And then going back to, the client acquisition piece, we've done a couple of conferences. So, you go to like Gartner's Reimagine HR conference. That's an opportunity. Just general advertising via website. We have a presence on G2.
Okay.
We're actually made it into the grid for G2, which was really, really cool. As a high performer, because of our customer service. And we've gotten some word of mouth now too. And we really think that we might have something, really good now at this point, because what's happening is, what we see is when, let's say, a talent leader leaves company A and they deployed Rooster, when they arrive at company B, they usually call us pretty quickly and say, hey, I want to put this in here, because the metrics in terms of the ROI and how much time we're saving for our clients is like really, really significant. We're talking about, for a Fortune 500 company, it's easily millions of dollars of savings.
Mm-hmm. Is that the main value prop that you guys put forward? Is all the time you're going to save trying to, set up these meetings with candidates? Is that the main thing that they're looking for?
It's actually a combination of things. I think the ROI needs to be there as a prerequisite. I don't think any company just wants to spend more money on talent acquisition just to spend more money on talent acquisition. Mm-hmm. But a lot of companies care about, uniform candidate experience and a good candidate experience, and also a good, interviewer experience, right? So if, let's say, there's friction within a company because, everything's done manually, and maybe hiring managers are frustrated, or the interview panelists are frustrated because there doesn't seem to be like a rhyme or reason, or like a little bit chaotic in terms of scheduling, that's definitely a selling point. And also, I think the other, kind of the third point outside of ROI and just improved experiences, the global nature of Rooster. So we run on all 6 continents. Minus Antarctica. It's all time zone normalized. You can run it in any language. You can have it translate into any language. And to have a truly global a truly global solution, I think we're, one of the few, if maybe not, if maybe the only one that does it in this many languages across this many countries and time zones. The final thing that I'll say is that we also work with multi-domain companies. So let's say you're a company, but you're really like 10 .com companies all under one umbrella. We can actually connect to all of that simultaneously. And we have a patent on that. So I think we're the only multi-domain solution on the market.
So speaking of competition, do you tend to see, is the space kind of more focused on integrated solutions, like to specific platforms, the way you guys are with Workday? Is there a lot of standalone solutions? What are you guys up against?
So I think it's a combination, but it's definitely morphing towards what can you integrate to, right? Because standalone is nice, if you want to read about a cool solution, but unless it integrates, enterprises will not really look at it, because it's a tremendous effort to integrate a piece of software, even though you might say, hey, as an API, so you can do it. It still takes effort. Someone has to maintain it. You build an integration, it can break. Who maintains it? So I think it's moving towards, having integrations as part of the package. So I think for standalone solutions out there, I don't think those will last long term unless they can attach themselves to either a market or a system or a use case. And all of our competition, that we run into, they all have, integration points to various systems. I don't think there's others that are maybe just, I think there may be others that might be just Greenhouse, for example, or maybe just iCIMS. But generally the ones we run into are can integrate to like Greenhouse, Workday, and others.
Okay. You mentioned that you started the company roughly 3 years ago, which would put you right around COVID, right? Mm-hmm. And given today's environment where, the interviews are almost exclusively virtual now, yep. How did that factor in? Had that already happened when you decided to create Rooster, or when you saw that COVID was happening and where things were likely to go, did you guys put your foot on the gas? Talk us through that timing.
Sure. No, so we started the development of Rooster before COVID started. Then COVID hit, and our consulting business was impacted, but not, we didn't have to do any like furloughs, layoffs, pay cuts, or anything like that. We made it.
Okay.
She grew that year. The consulting business grew in the COVID year. So maybe we didn't like go gung ho on Rooster. We were kind of maybe cautious, but we were just still, we still wanted to continue to develop it. And I would say that maybe even initially it kind of helped a little bit because everybody went to Zoom and Microsoft Teams and WebEx and whatnot. So there was maybe a little bit of a boost, and then like kind of like perfect timing for kind of an interview scheduling solution. So luckily it didn't impact us. I think if we would have, let's say, gone down the path of like big bang of like, let's say, raising like 5 million or something in funds and like hiring a team of like 30, 40 people at the outset and going about it that way, I think we would have been impacted. But the fact that we, just built as much as we had to build to get it going and kind of kept the team lean and small, I think it helped us to get through that time.
Yeah. You were talking about growing the company through bootstrapping and carving it out recently. I'm curious your perspective on kind of the VC market as it stands right now. I mean, obviously this has changed pretty drastically in very recent months. It seems like every day there's a new story or article coming out about, kind of what's out there and how difficult it is and how valuations are just, fractions of what they were just a year ago. I mean, what's your view on when is the right time to raise capital? When's the right time to carve it out? What advice can you give?
Sure. So, okay. So in terms of, I guess, let me start with maybe the raising the capital piece, because, I've never raised capital for a software company or a services company for that matter. I've made pitch decks and I've done a few pitches, but never really truly raised. And I think one of the things that I was totally naive to, which then I had an appreciation for later, as an entrepreneur, is that people see like, oh, someone just raised $5 million. That's unbelievable. Like, I want to get some money. Well, somebody can, like, people don't realize what are all the strings that are attached to that money. So what could happen, let's say if you raise too early, right? And let's say you raise, the number you wanted. Let's say you raise the 10 million you wanted when your company's making like 50 grand in revenue or something, right? You may not realize it at this time. And this is something that someone wise told me, is that you probably just sold your company. You haven't realized it yet, because that $10 million, it goes into a preferred position. The financier of your company gets their money out first. So if you ever have to, go under or sell at a loss, you get zero as a founder, right?
Yep.
So in terms of, timing of when to raise money, I think you really need to hold out, not quite as long as you can, but the closer you can get to the point of, let's say, profitability or some serious critical mass where, you have more than just a few clients, right? Where you maybe are getting some traction and you're getting recognized in this space, even though let's say you haven't raised money. Because the other thing that happens, I think, a little bit too with VC firms, depending on the VC, right? It depends how big their portfolio is you get an artificial boost from a VC, right? Because what they'll do is they'll fund you, and then if they're big enough, they might introduce you to their whole slew of portfolios, right? And then they'll all buy it, and then you have this kind of boost of growth. But how genuine is that growth, right? Is that just, the portfolio's buying your services just to, buy them, or was it a true market purchase, right?
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of that. And then in terms of spinning things out, the reason why we spun out Rooster is that it's not good to commingle two types of businesses under one umbrella. So if you have a service business and a software business, having it all that be on one set of books is not good for a number of reasons. One is, how much, like, you can still measure, you could have it as a business unit or whatever, but if you ever wanted to raise money, if you have a commingled business, that it's going to complicate things. You would have to find a VC firm or a PE firm, for that matter, that wants to invest in a software service hybrid. And the number of those that are willing to do that is like tiny, right? Whereas there's a huge number of financiers that want to invest in just services companies or just software companies. So, even though we weren't ready to raise any money for Rooster or anything like that, we needed to spin it out to be ready in case we did want to do, some kind of series down the line. And that's why we spun it out. And then also, when you spin things out, you can, give equity grants to the software side without, again, commingling anything.
Yep.
You can, run it like a true standalone company, and market. You get to market a little bit different. Now, granted, everything's still sort of operated, with the Kognitiv name attached to it, but spinning it out was definitely necessary for the reasons I just outlined.
Right. And making things easier down the road, right? You've separated the books, you've separated the brands, everything that goes along with that. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I guess the piece of advice that I would give, though, is if you are, let's say, a services company building a software, incorporate early. Don't do it late. We did it late, and it costs a lot more money to do it late, meaning you need to get the right legal advice. You have to hire a law firm. Yep. The way you spin it out, there's tax implications if you're not careful, right? So this was a big kind of learning for us, is that if let's say you're a company and you want to spin out a piece of your business, one would think logically like, oh, I'll just spin it out, I'll replicate the cap table, and then it's fine. Like, I get to do it. Well, that's not a tax-free transaction. The way the IRS code looks at that, I'm not a tax professional, so but what that really is what it's saying is that you're basically giving value to the shareholders of a new company. So technically they have to pay taxes on whatever cap table value they received. And then also whatever the company that's spinning it out, it's actually treated as like an M&A transaction, even though it's not really an M&A transaction. Mm-hmm. So you have to pay tax on, well, you just spun out, $2 million, $5 million, $10 million of business. Well, you got to pay tax on that. Even though you really didn't. It's tax code's complicated. So if you just incorporate from day one and keep all your IP in the entity, then that makes that process a lot easier.
It makes it easier. Yeah. The bottom line, consult your accountant and attorney.
Yes, and consult early.
Okay. Early in the process.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Luke, what's next for you guys? I mean, you've spun it out. You talked about, your guys are of course attached to Workday. Is there a thought that maybe there's some other ERPs, NetSuite or something like that it makes sense to put it into, or where are you guys kind of at in your life cycle?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of next steps, I think that a lot of people would think like, oh, the next step is to just integrate with more ATSs and more solutions. Mm-hmm. I think that's the really obvious kind of next step, but we're actually working on something different. So I have to kind of keep my cards too close to my vest here. But basically, what we do want to do though is we have not. There's no solution on the market today that has solved all the scheduling use cases yet under one roof. What I mean by that is, you have things like campus events, retail hiring events. You have, like I said, virtual scheduling panels, round robin, one-on-ones. There's a myriad of use cases that, have to be addressed, in my view, or have to be developed. And so we're going to kind of focus on that a little bit. But also, the other piece that we're really focusing on is, kind of giving some additional insight to our clients as to what they can do with, their scheduling data. And that's what we're going to be focusing on down the line. So now, in terms of attaching ourselves to other systems, that's never out of the question. Rooster's standalone. So you can technically integrate to anything with an API. But, I guess from an entrepreneurial perspective too, if you do the math and let's say, you have a solution in a market, you want to expand to other markets, it's actually pretty expensive to do so. It's not just development time, because let's say we were to go into the, I don't know, let's use Taleo as an example, right? Let's say we want to integrate with Taleo, which is kind of like an older recruiting system. Well, to do that, not only do you have to, do the development work to make it work with that, but you also have to have salespeople that know that space. You then also have to have solution architects that understand Teleo and how it works and what the scheduling opportunity is. So the incremental cost to get into additional markets is actually fairly significant. So it's not just like, oh, an extra 100K to get into a market. It's much more than that. So we want to be really measured and really thoughtful in where we go next. And the thing is that the Workday market is huge, right? Like Workday has so many customers. Has half the Fortune 500 runs Workday, or over half. For either HCM financials or both. And so we have plenty of customer base to acquire there.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Luke, this has been a lot of fun conversation. Great to hear about the backstory here and some of the challenges. And as I told you before, I mean, our company was spun out of a consulting firm, so shared some of those challenges. And I was nodding my head a lot because I was like, yes, absolutely, incorporate early. Don't wait too long, to do things like that. So I could definitely relate. But yeah, if anybody has questions about what they've heard today, wants to reach out or wants to learn more about Kognitiv or Rooster, what are the best places to go?
Yeah, about best places to go to our website. So the Rooster website is rooster.us, really easy to remember. And then the Kognitiv website is cognitivinc.com, but that's spelled KOGNITIVINC.com. And you can find out what Kognitiv is all about there.
Awesome. Well, Luke, thanks so much. Really appreciate the time today, and best of luck as you move forward with Rooster.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you for the time.